Let's go into our first segment here. This is an article, or I shouldn't say an article, it's a column by Mary Mitchell in the Sun-Times. And the headline goes, Chicago Police Department deserves a pat on the back. No mistake about it. And yeah, let me tell you, it had to be hard times for them working through the pandemic. No doubt about it. Now, I kind of question how hard because many of them are refusing to get vaccinated. So let's not pat them on the back too hard. Let's not break any arms or hands trying to pat them on the back to do it. But I want to talk more in depth about some of the stuff that Mitchell wrote in this column to show you just how ridiculous this thing is, and how it's totally based on BS. But she's a columnist, so she gets to write BS. It is her God-given right as a columnist. So here's a quote. I'm going to read you a couple of sentences here. Given the anti-police climate we are in, I imagine it would be easier to ignore a shots fired call than to rush headlong into the situation where there is a likelihood that things could go awry. Frankly, I don't know who would want to be on the police force right now, with children as young as 15 and 16 running around with powerful firearms that they aren't afraid to use. No, thank you. The reason this is so tone deaf is this column has been written by idiots in the media for 50 years in Chicago, at least. Maybe as long as there's been newspapers, probably. Their circumstances are unbelievably bad. They're horrific. No one wants to be a cop. And this time that we are in right now is the worst ever conceivable because we have absolutely no institutional memory about how it used to be in reality. So obviously this is the worst possible time. Now, what she's talking about with a lot of this is the fact that built into that statement in the code of it is that who would want to be a cop if you're held to account for what you do? Which is totally hypocritical because she's written many a column trying to hold the police accountable. She can't really make up her mind. We'll get to it's buried in the column about why she wrote this, but you're talking about having no institutional memory, no idea of what it used to be like or is, or was like in Chicago 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. When was it better to be a cop in Chicago than it is now? Under the Burge times? In the 60s? When? Obviously, Mary Mitchell thinks it was better some time ago. It'd be interesting to see if she could come up with an answer to that question. A couple more quotes. Meanwhile, Police Superintendent Dave Brown has been quietly taking care of business. I wonder what the hell she's basing that on. Let's see. I don't have faith in the rest of this. Maybe you can drop in the comments if you think I'm wrong, by all means, at any of the platforms you're watching this. So I continued with the column. The city's year-to-date homicide clearance rate now is 58.45% compared to 51.88% year-to-date in 2019. 4 years ago, the city's murder clearance rate was just 29%. I continue. The police department sends out daily alerts notifying the news media of people who were arrested and charged with serious crimes, including homicides. That last bit is total bullshit. That's PR for the department, so that's irrelevant. Why she thinks that's important, I have no idea. But the reality is none of this column's a total joke. It should have never been printed, but there aren't editors that would stop this kind of shit on any of the news in Chicago. This column's crapola. But let's get to the stats, the important part. One of the most doctored, manipulated statistics in all of policing is clearance rates. Mary Mitchell's not young. She's been around for a few rodeos. This is not her first one. She should know that this statistic is total and utter crap-ola. It's a statistic that the media rarely looks into but swallows whole like nobody's business, just like Mary Mitchell has done here. So the homicide clearance rate went from 29% to 51.88 to 58.45. And she's buying that garbage. Now, during this time, Eddie Johnson was involved. He took over after McCarthy destroyed the department and destroyed the detective division. If you read the cop blogs and you read the media, right? McCarthy reorganized, trying to make how Chicago was run into what it was in New York, and used unlimited resources and reduced the number of areas the detectives were in. So despite that, homicide rates went up. Homicide clearance rates went up. Then Beck came in and made changes. Clearance rates still going up, though. Then David Brown comes in and the clearance rates are still going up. Now, Beck made changes to Eddie Johnson because the changes Eddie Johnson made weren't working. The changes David Brown did were because the changes Beck did were not working. How in the hell does the homicide clearance rate keep going up so dramatically if the damn changes the previous superintendent were making didn't work? A doubling of the clearance rates. In this Sun-Times columnist who's been around for a lot of rodeos believes it. It's staggeringly dumb. Staggeringly dumb. Even for the Chicago media. Staggeringly dumb to believe it. Here's a quick little primer on clearance rates. Maybe we'll write an issue brief on it. Clearance. One offender, one arrest. They arrest the offender. Cleared. Now they put cuffs on him and take him into custody. It's cleared. Whether or not there are ever charges filed does not make a difference. That's on the state's attorney. So they can arrest someone, put cuffs on him, and say, we're going to charge you with murder. They go to felony review and it gets denied. They never end up pressing charges. They release them. Don't make a difference. We know who did it. It's cleared. CPD puts a little checkbox. This is through the Uniform Crime Report that allows them to keep stats this way. That's bullshit. It's manipulated. That's what it is. It's manipulated. Now, it gets worse. They know who did it. No one has to validate they know. And the offender has fled the jurisdiction. They know who did it, but the offender died. They know who did it, but they can't prosecute the person. No one validates that number. There's no system to validate it. Journalists should be validating it regularly. They're not. No one's validating it. So it just might be the fact that the 29% under Eddie Johnson was actually just a truthful number. And that the 58 is completely full of crapola. Now, why would I say that? Well, it turns out that David Brown, the superintendent of Chicago Police Department, while he was in the superintendent of Dallas, has a long history of being part of plots to manipulate crime statistics in Dallas. That is what he does. That was his pattern. I called journalists and others in Dallas. We knew this was coming. And Mary Mitchell, because her and her colleagues at the Sun-Times never did research into Brown's history, are buying this hook, line, and sinker. It's a joke. And she really loves when they send out those notifications when they charge people. Oh my God. Such a good job, Superintendent David Brown. Your department sends out emails so that we can write good stories about you. Otherwise, I know it's public relations. All right, I continue. They've accomplished this goal while facing the perils of foot pursuits and car chases involving some who aren't about to go peacefully. On Thursday, the Sun-Times reported that 66% of Chicago police car chases in 19 ended in crashes. 8 of those crashes were fatal. What does it have to do anything with the story? What does that have to do with the point she's making in the column? The truth is, she has no idea. That was basically cut and pasted, more or less, from the Sun-Times story about that we covered on Monday. I think it may have been last Friday, but I think it was Monday on the show. That's it. That has nothing to do with it. She just thought, oh, that sounds good. Maybe I'll cut and paste and put that in. Are there more foot chases and car pursuits now than there were? She hasn't have a clue. She never looked. She doesn't care. She let that sound good. So she put it at the bottom of her column. This is stenography at its best. You have to question the value of columnists if this is what you're getting. Why was this column written? Well, let's get to the crux of the point here. Why did, as my dog chimes in here, why did she write this column? Well, it turns out that Miss Mitchell has a friend whose husband is a cop. And she talked to her about, cops are people too, and they're doing their best. That's what it takes to get a Sun-Times column written in your favor to support your political perspective. What is it? It's you have a friend that's a columnist. Man, this column's a piece of crapola. But it's Chicago, so that's what you come to expect. Just unflinching, undying loyalty to report statistics and the fact that somehow the clearance rate doubled and didn't find it suspicious at all. It's mind-blowing. Mind-blowing.